Deep in the heart of the mystical realm where fairies ruled the skies and vampires lurked in the shadows, an impossible love story began. Alara, a radiant fairy princess with wings that shimmered like the morning sun, was bound by duty to her people. The fairies were the keepers of light, sworn protectors of purity, and sworn enemies of the creatures of the night. Dorian, a powerful vampire prince with crimson eyes and an aura of darkness, was raised to believe that fairies were weak, fragile beings unworthy of their existence. To him, they were nothing more than flickering candles waiting to be snuffed out. But fate had other plans. One fateful night, during an uneasy truce meeting between the two clans, Alara and Dorian's eyes met across the grand chamber. It was brief, just a moment. But in that instant, the world around them faded. There was no war, no centuries of hatred, just an undeniable pull toward one another. What started as stolen glances turned into secret meetings in the Twilight Meadow, a forbidden place where neither fairy nor vampire dared to tread. Beneath the silver glow of the moon, their love grew like a wildfire. They spoke of dreams beyond war, of a future where their love could exist freely. But love between a fairy and a vampire was not only forbidden, it was punishable by death. When Alara's father, King Etherian, learned of her betrayal, he was furious. "You dare disgrace our bloodline with a creature of darkness," he bellowed. Dorian faced the same wrath. His mother, Queen Velasca, was ruthless. "You would taint our noble race with the filth of a winged pest," she sneered. Yet, despite the threats, despite knowing the cost, Alara and Dorian chose love. They fled into the unknown, determined to escape the war that had divided their people for centuries. But destiny was not so kind. Alara became pregnant, and when word of the unborn child reached both kingdoms, it sent shockwaves through the land. The moment Alara went into labor, the sky split with lightning, and the earth trembled. A being unlike any the world had ever seen was about to be born, a child neither fully fairy nor fully vampire, but something entirely new. The birth was unlike any other. The baby's first cry sent a surge of magic rippling through the realm. The air crackled with raw energy as both fairy and vampire blood coursed through its tiny veins. A girl, a newborn with delicate wings laced with silver and violet, her eyes shifting between glowing gold and deep crimson. Her presence alone was a contradiction, an impossibility brought to life. The whispers spread like wildfire. "The abomination exists." Within hours, both kingdoms mobilized. The fairies, fearing the corruption of their pure lineage, declared that the child must be destroyed. The vampires, unwilling to tolerate a being that threatened their bloodline, sought to claim her for themselves or end her existence. Alara and Dorian had no time to rest. The war they had tried to escape had found them. The only way to save their daughter was to run. No place was safe. The forests burned with fairy fire as soldiers scoured the land. The skies were patrolled by winged scouts, and the shadows crawled with vampire assassins. Everywhere they went, death followed. Alara and Dorian moved from one hidden refuge to another, but the walls of the world were closing in. They were hunted not just for their betrayal but for the terrifying potential of their child. The girl, whom they named Celine, was special. By night, she showed signs of her vampire heritage. Her skin turned pale, her eyes glowed red, and the very shadows obeyed her. By day, her fairy side awakened. She absorbed sunlight, her wings radiated pure energy. And she could heal wounds with a mere touch. She was powerful, too powerful. The fairy king feared she would corrupt the sacred balance. The vampire queen feared she would become their greatest enemy. Both sides sought to claim her, to mold her into a weapon for their cause. As Celine grew, so did her abilities, and so did the relentless pursuit. One night, the hunters finally caught up to them. It was a blood moon when the final stand began. In the Valley of Echoes, beneath a sky tainted red, the armies of fairies and vampires clashed in a war unlike any before. It wasn't a battle for land, nor power, it was a battle over a child. Celine stood at the heart of it all, barely old enough to understand why the world wanted her dead. Alara and Dorian refused to give her up. They fought with everything they had, but they were outnumbered. The fairy king unleashed celestial magic, while the vampire queen summoned creatures of the abyss. The land was torn asunder, the air filled with the cries of the fallen. And then, Celine spoke. Her voice rang like a bell, silencing the battlefield. She didn't choose one side over the other. She chose herself. With a single gesture, she unleashed her full power. Light and darkness intertwined, swirling like twin serpents. The sky cracked open, the winds howled, and every warrior, fairy and vampire alike, was forced to their knees. Enough, she whispered. And the war stopped. The dust settled. The battlefield was silent. Selene stood between the two warring factions, neither fully one nor the other, but something beyond both. Alara and Dorian had given up everything to protect their child, and now, Selene would decide the future of their world. She walked to the Fairy King. You fear me because I am different. But I am your blood. She turned to the Vampire Queen. You hunt me because I am strong. But I am your kin. The leaders stood in stunned silence, realizing the truth. Selene was not a curse. She was a bridge. With her power, she sealed the war with a binding pact, a truce forged not in fear, but in understanding. The war was over. For the first time in centuries, fairies and vampires coexisted, their fates bound by the child they once sought to destroy. Alara and Dorian had won. And Selene, she was no abomination, she was the future.